Hey guys, I'm Jackson Rollo, the host of the One and Done podcast. We're super excited to release season 3, and in season 3, we're going to be rolling out a new theme to the podcast. So over the first 2 years, our theme has been interviewing younger, successful people in any white-collar business, really just trying to teach our college students and anybody out there trying to figure out what they want to do at a young age, what businesses exist. With season 3, we're taking it a level deeper, and we're going to be interviewing people who are either co-founders or C-level executives at a very young age. So going from what they're doing in business to really showing that pinnacle of success, what it looks like to run a company, to found a company, the struggles of an entrepreneur, and what it looks like to grow a business and to lead people. We're super excited, and we want to welcome you to season 3 of the One and Done podcast. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode, season 3 of the One and Done podcast. On season 3, we're focused on bringing you some of the higher level conversations when you get into the top end of business. People like founders, executives, entrepreneurs. At the top end, the people setting the vision and the pace for the company. Excited for today's episode. Today we have Spencer Altschul. Get it right?
You got it.
Close, man. I'll tell you what, these first couple episodes of season 3, man, y'all are not treating me good with these last names, but my last name is Rollo. No one ever can pronounce it right, so I feel your pain. But no, man, hey, thank you so much for joining us. Early morning for Spencer. He's out in Arizona right now. And so, Spencer, man, thanks for joining the show.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, well, hey, tell me about this. Tell me a little bit about your background. Let the listeners know about who you are and about wet hydration, and let's dive in from there.
Yeah. I was born in New Jersey. I moved to Vegas when I was super young, so I always claimed Vegas as my home.
You a Golden Knights fan then?
Yeah, for sure.
There you go.
Them coming kind of set the city on fire. It was great for the city, and we've kind of rallied around them as our first real sports team. But so yeah,
I
I grew
went
up
to a
in
game earlier this year. It was fantastic.
yeah,
It was awesome.
yes, atmosphere is unlike any other hockey game I've ever been to. And it's funny because people come to visit, and we take them to a Knights game, and they're like, "Hey, man, this is nothing like, whether it's Columbus or even LA." So
Yep.
it's a pretty cool experience. But yeah, I grew up in Vegas. Graduated high school. I went to Washington for college. I lasted about 6 months at Washington State, and ended up transferring to USC. So when I transferred to USC in Southern Cal, dream school of mine, that's really kind of where my entrepreneurship, kind of, I guess, the bug got me. I really always wanted to do something. So after that kind of gave me the kind of the courage and the, I guess, the added confidence to kind of see through what I was thinking. And so that's where it was at USC where I started my beverage company, Wet Hydration. So.
Yeah, man. So tell me this, one of the things that we've been talking about is like when we talk about people who start companies, where did you get the idea for Wet Hydration? Kind of what made you want to found that? And what made you said you had the bug, right? Like what made you want to own your own company?
That's a good question. I don't know what it was that made me want to own my own company. I don't know if it was from the level of, the thought process of like, oh, I want to own something. I think it was more about I wanted to create something. I wanted to create something in my head that I could bring to fruition, that could kind of, be in the industry, right? Be in the world, bring the product out and to everybody. But what gave me that was I was having a casual conversation with a buddy of mine who had just sold a company. Part of that sale, they were going to open up some beverage manufacturing facilities. He was telling me about one of the companies that he was co-manufacturing for, and I never heard of it before. After that call, I researched everything. I mean, there was not a YouTube video, there was not a review that I didn't look at. I was obsessed with this company and tried the product. Unfortunately, it wasn't for me, but what it had done for me was giving me this idea of what a beverage company could be, the shift in kind of the world with social media, and also what the power of brand really instills in whether it's a CPG company, whether it's food and beverage, restaurant. Like it really was for me the catalyst of like there's so much power in having a brand, uh, a really strong brand, and I dove right in. That was kind of the beginning of it.
Yeah, well, let's dive right into that, man, because that's what's been awesome for me about you is like you obviously have this desire of building a brand, right? And when people see that, they think of something. So when you think of like a brand, what were you trying to get across with wet hydration, and what is the when you say that you love the power of a brand, what is it about that you like? What about that is something that intrigued you?
Yeah, I think from the creative side, it's figuring out what consumers want, and also figuring out whether there's a hole in the market, stuff like that, right? So knowing that I didn't know this at the time, but I found out very quickly that beverages extremely competitive, super capital intensive. But what I was trying to figure out was where can this brand? I knew there was a need. I just didn't know where the brand fit in. And with beverage being saturated and super competitive, there's not a lot of room. It's a really high entry barrier to entry with just the capital intensiveness of the industry. But when I was cleaning up my car every day, I realized that I had five or six different brands. I had whether that was an energy drink, whether that was a sports drink, whether that was a specialty, functional beverage. I was realizing that I had all these different brands, and I wanted one brand that I could stay with the entire day. Whether that was if I needed energy, if I needed electrolytes, if I needed ginger turmeric, and so that was really kind of where this brand kind of went was to become one brand that a consumer could stay with the entire day. And that's what I set out to build.
I love it. So wet hydration. Where did it come from? What made you pick the name? Love the hat, by the way. I'm gonna have to hit you up for one of those later on after the show. But tell me, how'd you come up with the name?
I honestly I can't take credit for it. I wish I could, but I had started when I had started the company. I had called it Velvet. That was kind of the name I was going with. And I was chatting with my mom about my plans and what I was doing, and she called me in the middle of the night and she said, "I have the best name for you." And I was like, "What do you got?" And she said, "I think you should call the brand Wet Hydration." And I was like, "Wow." And it's funny the two biggest catalysts of our brand, one being the name and two being our acronym. So Wet actually stands for weaving everyone together. Uh, Both of those I can't take credit for.
Hey, well, look, the
Mom's my
best things
best.
in the best things in life are usually the things you steal and you promote constantly. So I feel
Yeah.
you for that. And hey, everybody needs a mom that's willing to do that, right? Wake up late in the night and be like, hey, I got it. I got this idea for you. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about some of your role models. Like when you think about running a company, there's a lot of tough things, and we'll get to that a little bit later on.
Yeah.
But when you think about running a company, you got to have some people there that support you. And at first, it might just be you. So it's some people external to you that care about your well being and success. Who are those role models for you? And what are some of the lessons that they taught you as you started your company?
Yeah. It's great. And I think early on when when you're looking to start something, I think there's this, yes, it's fun, yes, it's exciting, but there's always this kind of, daunting side of it of it's scary. Is it going to work? How am I going to do it? It's really easy to, and it's not easy to start something, but once you do start something, it's easy to kind of just live in the excitement of it and not kind of understand that every day is not going to be great, right? Early on, you don't understand that. It doesn't really like resonate until you start going through those days of like, wow, this is a lot tougher than I thought it was going to be. There's so many twists and turns and unexpected things that happen. So I think early on, the role model's got to be someone that instills that courage in you, that reminds you that you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I think for me, that was my mom. She really was someone that really pushed me to not give up to really start what I wanted to do, and reminded me that whatever I set my mind to, I could accomplish, which was great. I think moving past that, right, as you get into the business, as you meet new people, I've been really fortunate to have some really strong advisors who have set the path for me. One of them being Mike Pickett. He was the founder of Muscle Milk. He's been, instrumental in my career as I've built out this beverage company, whether that's you know,
That's a
advice
good
on
role model right there.
yeah, whether it's advice on manufacturing, whether it's advice on investments, or how to raise money. Um, it's just being able to pick up the phone and call someone who's done it, who's been there before me. It's a huge blessing. So he's definitely been a role model
Yeah.
for me.
That's awesome, man. No, like I said, that's a good guy to have in your corner right there, right?
Yeah,
That helps you be more confident alone. You mentioned
definitely.
something that's been on my mind lately, as I run my business, and so one of the things that I've been considering is you mentioned like the good days and the bad days, right? Early on, I think you have those all the time, right? And I think that's what so many people are unwilling to recognize is, look, you in this role, it's not going to be consistent. You're going to have days that are amazing and have days that are bad. And really what I've been trying to do is I've been trying to stabilize and say, let's make my bad days a little bit better and let's make my good
Yeah,
days maybe not a little bit worse, but let's temper those expectations and understand that
definitely.
you have to have both to be successful. I think people always expect, oh, well, that person's successful. It's just every day is awesome. Like, no, you still have emotions, right? You still wake up on the
Yeah.
wrong side of the bed some days, and it's just you're frustrated for no real reason.
Yep.
How do you handle those emotions, and how do you see the good days and the bad days as it relates to like making you more successful?
Yeah. I always say, um, there's two choices when you have bad days. It can either humble you and you can learn from it, or you can just fight it. There's we all go through those days where we either acknowledge, hey, this is a bad day, or we try and fight it. And for me, I think it's kind of like you, right? Trying to remember that just because there's a bad day doesn't mean it's gonna stay, right? Bad days aren't forever. It's if you work hard enough and you continue to push through, those bad days will tend to turn to good days. There's a I had a saying that my brother instilled in me was, you've walked this far, just keep walking, right? Even if it's bad, just keep walking,
Yep.
and that's it's proven true over and over and over again for me. So
Yeah, it is, and I think you have to be willing to accept some of those bad days, and like you said, learn from them. Let them humble
yeah,
you, and also let them set a baseline so you're more grateful when you have a good day, right?
100%.
And I think the thing you mentioned is the thing that I love the most about it, which is the discipline and the consistency to just keep walking, to just get through it. Because
Yeah,
at the end of the day, I think a lot of people lack that. I know one of the things you mentioned when we were talking earlier is, you've kind of gotten back to a disciplined rhythm of taking care of yourself, which helps you take care of your company. One of the things you mentioned there was writing. Talk to me about that. Like, what has that done for you? That reflection time, because sometimes we're going so fast, right? We're running fast. We're like avoid thinking about the past and how to avoid those mistakes. We're thinking about the
yeah,
future and where we want to go. You don't live in the present sometimes. And
yeah,
reflecting, I think, has a lot to do with just being grateful for where you're at right now. How do you use writing as it relates to reflecting, and what benefit has it brought to you?
yeah. I think just being able to get the thoughts that you have in your mind out on a piece of paper, honestly, whether it's reflecting on a bad day, whether it's words of affirmation for yourself, words of affirmation for where you've been, whether it's writing the bad things that you've gone through, and being able to just reflect on those things and use that time to see it and then decide, just like we were just chatting about, right? Like, see it and decide, am I going to let this humble me? Is this one of those things where I'm just going to you know put in my closet and just kind of keep pushing through? Also too, like, in that writing process, it's also reminding myself to write things down that I want to remember, right? Writing things down of like, hey, I need to get this done, or a task, because there's so many tasks that go undone because it doesn't get written down, it doesn't get remembered, and all of that kind of leads to whether that's the success of your day, success of your company, or it's For me, getting everything I can on a piece of paper at the end of the day or as it comes up is something that has really helped me.
I think the thing for me that I like about it is it brings things up that honestly I kind of have already forgotten, even though they happened 3 hours ago, right? Like I don't know about you,
100%.
my calendar is a color coded nightmare most days.
Yeah.
My assistant, she jokes with me, she's like, well, I'd make it better, but you keep telling me to schedule meetings, so I keep having to add them in there. And
Yeah.
so it's you go through so much in the day, right? That by the time you end it, you're like, I don't even remember what I did anymore. So
Yeah.
sometimes that reflection time is just like, oh wow, I kind of forgot about that and the importance and the significance of that long term.
Yep.
Thinking long term, I know that one of the things that I always have to deal with is bettering myself because it might not make a lot of sense to sacrifice that time right now, but it will 3 years, 5 years down the road as I work to get better every day. What do you do each day to try to make yourself better? Like, what is your habit and rhythm as far as taking in information to try to better yourself for the purposes of growing wet hydration?
Yeah. Um, I think for me, I think it changes, whether that's day to day or week to week. I've Prioritizing health is definitely something that has come up for me in recent. Just I think there was this naiveness to me of I'm just going to keep working, just going to keep grinding. I don't think I've taken a vacation in probably 3 or 4 years. It's just been a constant grind of brick by brick, trying to figure out this industry, trying to figure out this brand, trying to figure out how to whether it's put myself in a positive situation or whether it's the employees, whatever that may be. So I think one, prioritizing my health, prioritizing you know making sure that at the beginning of the day that I'm the best version of myself that I could possibly be, and taking inventory check at the end of the day. And that's from the personal side. I think from the business side, it's checking in with the employees, checking in, making sure I stay close to the business, um, making sure that I have a structured plan for my day, kind of like you, similar to the fact of jam packing the schedule. Honestly, trying to find holes where I can in those days so that I can get the things that I need to do.
Get some stuff
Being
done, actually.
right. I always say it's 4 o'clock and I'm just now starting what I actually have to do. Right.
Yep.
There's not enough. There's too many times where I say there's not enough hours in the day, but really it's about trying to minimize how many times that's said, and really just trying to be as effective as I can from the time that I'm awake. So
So one of the things you mentioned scaling, and that's interesting to me too because scaling is something that we've really tried to hone in on. For us, it sounds similar to you. We have a very family based culture, and so we'll talk about that second. But as it relates to scaling and not losing that, talk to me about like what are some of your advice or some thoughts you have as it relates to scaling a business. What do you think of when you look at a business that's trying to scale? Like, if you were going to fix it or make it better, what would it be?
yeah, um, I think the most important thing with scaling is before you scale, you got to have the infrastructure, right? The infrastructure has to be there, and if it's not there, it needs to be thought about. What is needed to actually get to scale? It's something that we talk about all the time in our business. Or for us, scaling, whether that's inventory, whether that's retail footprint. It's like, okay, what do we need to do in order to actually, you know, expand our footprint, in retail? Do we need more inventory? Do we need, area sales managers? Do we need merchandising? What is it from the actual business that we can implement in order to hit scale? And so my advice for a company scaling is to take inventory, make sure that you do have the infrastructure built before you implement the tactics to scale that brand, and also being prepared. Right, that goes right back into that. But having the plan, and being able to blueprint that out and then put the plan and execute and see if you have all the pieces and timing's right and your infrastructure is there, then I think scale is inevitable.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think you have to. I think you have to think through all the different patterns, yeah, or the paths, right? And you have to figure out which one works best for you. I don't know. I don't know if it's like this for you, but for me, it seems like decision time is usually it all hits you at once, right? Like you get five good opportunities and you get to pick one and a half, right?
Yeah.
And it never works out where it's like, okay, just one thing at a time. Every time I end a good opportunity, another one pops up and I take that. You're constantly having to make decisions as a person in charge of a business, and you're having to think, is this which one is best? And I think that's what scaling is about, is which one is best at the time. What impact is this going to have later, and how am I going to use it to the betterment of my company? So as it relates to scaling and all that, right? Because all of that comes down to efficiency, operations. There's an element to that I think people miss a lot of times, and that's people. And sometimes it's okay to sacrifice scaling and efficiency for people. I know for us, one of the big things is we will not scale without the right people. So I don't care if I open another office ever if I don't find another person who fits our culture and our company and the way we want to grow. How do you balance and harmonize those two sometimes conflicting thoughts?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. One of the things that I thought about when you're saying that is, before we scale into any retail store, expand, I should say, our team is in constant communication about, hey, if we expand to that store, what does it look like? What are we expecting out of that store? When we expand into any retail store or, add a retail store, whether it's a chain, whether it's a 50 store chain, a 20 store chain, our conversations are, hey, what are we expecting out of this, right? What's revenue look like? What is added revenue? What is that going to do to our inventory management? What does that do from a supply chain standpoint? What are expected velocities? So for us, having constant communication with the employees of, whether it's usually the conversations between me and my head of sales, who's got 25 years of experience. I lean on him really heavily, especially because at the end of the day, I can't have the experience that I don't have, and you have to rely on the people that do have that, and the ones that you trust and the ones that you bring into your organization. And I always say there's nothing better than relying on someone that's done it before and has seen something that you haven't seen, plus the harmony of having fresh eyes and being able to kind of challenge that of, hey, what about this angle? Even though I haven't seen what others have seen, you can always kind of put your spin on it, and there's usually a harmony right in the middle of that. Somewhere in there, there's some equilibrium. So.
Okay, so you just had two things that popped in my mind. The first thing is you mentioned that you got a head of sales 25 years of experience, which
Yeah.
means going to be an older person than you are, right? Like they have
Yeah.
more experience, but you're technically in charge. How do you get the respect, or how do you work like that, right? Because I think the people who listen to this podcast are young for the most part. I know I'm in the same situation as you. I got people who've been doing this for 30, 40, 50 years, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the one who has to make the decisions at the end of the day. You mentioned leaning on their experience. I love that. And not saying, well, I don't have the experience, so therefore I can't make decisions. That's not how this works. Sometimes the fresh perspective is actually perfect because they think of something, and then between the two of you, there's an answer that comes up because it needs that fresh perspective. How do you balance that, though? Because that is something that a lot of young people in leadership positions have to balance and deal with. And I think
Yeah.
everybody has a different approach.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a probably my biggest learning curve, as it's something that when you start the business it's not there, right? You don't have to, it's one of the things that you don't really have to think about from day one. For me, I like to think about this business from whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 4 years. So as I started to hire, it definitely started to creep into my mind. I think for me, how that's balanced is by, one thing is leading by example. I know I'm not going to be able to say, some of the enlightening things because I don't have that experience. There's definitely going to be some things I can say, but, one being, one, staying true to myself, being who I am, and also, making sure that I'm, you know, have touch points with the employees and able to kind of make them feel comfortable, listen to what they have to say. Always, when challenging, do it in a respectful way. And yeah, somehow in the middle of all that, there's an equilibrium, like I said, of the fresh perspective, the new perspective, and the experience all coming together to make a successful decision.
And I think that's what innovation is, right? It's taking something that's a baseline, the experience, and then, giving it a fresh perspective or analysis. It's interesting because I'm very similar. I use the two words that come to my mind, which is humility, but also challenging. I'm humble in knowing, hey, there's things that I'm not going to be able to know because I've been here for 4 years, 5 years. You've been here for 25. You've seen some things, but at the same time, whenever it comes down to something that I have a vision for, right, I can challenge, and we can have that. But another thing too, I think you have to start with the humility. You can't start with the challenging because they have to have some respect that you have maybe a new perspective or a vision that maybe they haven't seen before. Maybe you're the founder, right? You're the one leading the vision of where you're going. They're helping you get there, and so you're using that experience to help you get there. But you have to put your mind into them through probably months and years of explaining where you're trying to go, and that always is getting updated, right? So I think it's a beautiful equilibrium is a great word, because I think there's a balance there that most people are afraid of, but the reality is when combined, I think it's unstoppable what you can get done with experience and with a fresh perspective. So I always tell people, with our company, I'm the motor, right? Like, I'm the engine. I'm gonna make sure we're going 80 all the time. My leadership team's going to make sure we're driving in the correct lane, going in the right direction, and not crashing. Right? That is how we do this. So,
100%.
So last thing, man, before we kind of close down, what is like your big thing right now? So one of the things I found out about like founders, entrepreneurs, or executives, they always have something that's the big thing on their mind, and it changes based on the information you take in, or changes based on the experiences or the problems you're facing right now. Like, what's your big thing as it relates to just the philosophy of business and how you're attacking it?
I think right now the only thing that we're kind of in a place right now, with fresh financing round, we're really right now we have this kind of brand refresh coming out, so that's really where my brain's been. Just kind of how do we reintroduce this brand? How do we continue to grow out our stores? And my thing right now is on, I guess the big thing would be, we've seen what all these brands, have done to the soda category, to the energy space category. I'm interested in what's going to happen to the hydration category, right? That's the space that I'm in. That's the space that I, eat, sleep, and breathe. So it's, what is that next trend going to be for hydration? We've seen big soda get changed with companies like Poppy and Olipop, going after, making, whether it's making soda fun, whether it's making soda healthy, whether it's, gut health. I think we've seen that with energy, right? We've seen Celsius come in, create the healthy energy. It's, where does that go with hydration? We saw Logan Paul come in and kind of with Prime make hydration about, celebrity face, or go after a demographic that maybe hydration wasn't going after in the first place, which was, kids. And so I'm interested to see and trying to get ahead of that curve and kind of be the leader in the trend setting of where does hydration go from here.
Yep.
So
You either set the future or you're afraid of it, one of the two, right? And I love the approach, right? Instead of, I don't know where this is going to go, so I'm just going to sit back and wait. No, it's like, hey, I know where I'm going to go, right? And that's where I think the future is, and meeting the client where they are at the end of the day, the consumer, correct?
Yep.
And man, Spencer, it's been absolute pleasure. CEO and founder of Wet Hydration. Tell the people where they can find you, man. Where can they find you? Where can they connect with you? I know you're always about trying to figure out ways to grow your brand.
Yeah. So the big one is Amazon. Ship everywhere. Next day shipping. Our website, wethydration.com. We've got some Albertsons banners. We've got some Central Market. We've got some HEB banners.
I was about to say HEB, man, down here in Texas. That's what you got to do.
Yeah, we've got everywhere from our store locators on our website. But we've got about 1,500 doors, growing about 3,000 by the end of this year. So on Instagram.
Well, man, Yeah, congratulations with all the success. Thanks for the early morning with us, man. It's an absolute pleasure. Appreciate you.
Yep. You got it, man. Thanks so much.